Welcome to the Torqueconomics weekly automotive update leading up to the 8th of June 2025. Let's dive into our releases and discontinuations monitor. We start with a couple of discontinuations that is very upsetting for me. Firstly, the FL5 generation of the Civic Type R is being discontinued in both England and Europe. Honda previously stated this will be the last generation of the Type R that is fully petrol powered. However, even this is cut short by emission regulations from the EU. The car will still be available in markets elsewhere, including the US, Japan, and Australia for the time being. In a twisted set of fate, it works out for Honda as the FL5 is made in Japan, whereas previous Type Rs have been manufactured in the UK for a couple of decades. That shift happened due to the UK plant closing down following Brexit. Regardless, Honda is releasing an Ultimate Edition of the car limited to 40 units, 10 of which will be allocated to the UK. The internals and power output remain the same, but the car is given additional flares such as a carbon wing, as well as a unique paint job. Unfortunately, that was not the only bad news this week. Ford announced that the company is completely exiting the hot hatch segment with the discontinuation of both the Fiesta and Focus RS. Unlike the Type R, this change is global. However, it does hit Europe particularly hard, as the only mainstream front-wheel drive hot hatches that are left is the Golf and Polo GTIs. As a reminder, the critically acclaimed i20 and i30N cars from Hyundai were also pulled from the market in 2024. Now let's move on to some better news. Have you ever wanted to drive a LeMan car on the road, completed with cup holders? Well, Porsche officially made one in the form of a road-legal 963 FIA race car. Inspirations are taken from the 917, of which 3 road-going examples have been recorded. Unlike original predictions, the car has been built as a one-off for the racing team owner of Team Penske. This means that it will not join the Ferrari F80 and the McLaren W1 to form the new Holy Trinity. Personally though, I think the idea of a Holy Trinity is outdated, as when the original 3 came out in the 2010s, they were groundbreaking in terms of technology, whereas now, the hypercar market is much more saturated with the likes of Bugatti and Koenigsegg. Case in point, the Italian design house, Pininfarina, is releasing a celebratory edition of its 1500 horsepower hypercar called the Battista, which shares the same drivetrain with the Rimac Nevera. This quad-motored EV marks the 95th anniversary for the design house. McLaren had also announced a special edition of their 750S called the LeMan edition. A high downforce kit has been added to the car, and production is limited to 50 units. Now let's take a look at some more spy shots for the new GT500. Reports suggest that the car could produce power in excess of 800 by using the same 5.2 litre V8 engine as the last GT500 from 2020. Also from America, Ram had reintroduced a V8 option for its 1500 truck after sales dwindled from 18 months prior due to a shift to V6. The new truck comes with a 48-volt battery with power derived from a belt-driven motor. This is expected to provide more torque on demand. After ditching the 6-litre W12, Bentley has still managed to produce a Bentayga that is more powerful than the outgoing. By using the VW Group's EA825 engine, the same found in the RS6 and Urus, power has been dialed to 641, which is slightly above the 626 from the old W12 Bentayga speed. In more affordable new releases, a Japanese startup by the name of KG Motors has started selling a single-seater EV for the equivalent of 7,000 USD. Top speed is 37 miles or 60 km per hour, and range is 62 miles or 100 km. What is perhaps surprising to me is that the car, called the MiBot, carries features including heated seats, a touchscreen, speakers, and aircon. An iterative update to the Kia Sportage has released this week. It isn't really the most exciting car, but a 236 horsepower hybrid option has been added, in addition to an updated exterior which I honestly quite like. Toyota is releasing the lowest emitting non-plug-in hybrid on the market in the form of the AygoX. It gets 114 horsepower and a top-level GR trim. Although this is not a full GR car, as it does not get any additional horsepower, sort of like AMG line or M line from European manufacturers. Lastly, in new releases, this one is depressing. Chrysler is celebrating its 100th anniversary this week, and to commemorate it, a sticker on its Pacifica minivan. Alright. Now we move on to the headlines of the week. Starting with Motorsport, we saw a liquid hydrogen powered GR Corolla complete its first endurance race. It completed 468 laps of the 4.6 km Fuji Speedway, showcasing the viability of hydrogen. Liquid hydrogen cars are zero emission, and the range is less of an anxiety. However, the fuel must be kept at negative 258 degrees Celsius, which is very technically challenging. New hosts have been announced for the Amazon Grand Tour after Clarkson, Hammond and May's departure. I can fully get behind the appointment of the popular YouTube duo from Throttle House. What I am less certain about is the appointment of Francis, who is a popular train spotter on TikTok. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Moving into Tesla, as was all over the headlines, the Tesla CEO Elon Musk had a fallout with the US President Donald Trump on Twitter after the Big Beautiful Bill was passed. Tesla shares took a nosedive after the news, as EV incentives would be removed and all government contracts associated with Musk would be cancelled. Musk had actually encouraged the removal of EV incentives in 2021, along with the removal of incentives for petrol-powered vehicles. However, only the EV incentives were removed as part of the Big Beautiful Bill. Although unrelated to cars, a cancellation of contracts would affect the current US astronauts, as Musk's SpaceX is the current provider of transportation. Musk's political involvement continues to put him in a tough spot. Tesla's sale in Europe continued to remain low in May, although the new Model Y's deliveries will improve the numbers in the coming months. In fact, car scoops have already reported a new Model Y kicking off incentives for demo models, which will hopefully turn things around. Last piece on Tesla. Reuters reported that an internal project for a $25,000 EV was cancelled by Musk. Tesla chief engineer, Lars Moravi, instead suggested a more stripped-down version of the current Model 3 and Model Y is the brand's current strategy for cheaper vehicles. In other EV-related news, BYD is venturing into Japan's K-car market. China is currently a demand-restricted economy, so it makes sense for BYD to venture into a relatively niche market in its neighbouring country. K-cars, by the way, are small vehicles with max power output of 47 kilowatts that are given tax breaks in Japan. A ship carrying EVs caught fire in the Pacific Ocean and was promptly abandoned. The ship was destined for Mexico after leaving a Chinese port, carrying about 3,000 vehicles from brands such as Chery and Great Wall Motors. Reports have suggested 800 of the 3,000 were EVs and is the cause for the fire. As we see demand for pure EVs falter, we have seen a rise in range-extending hybrids. An article by CNBC this week suggests that range-extending models might be an in-term solution. This is a concept that is popular in China, whereby instead of having a petrol-powered engine, petrol is fed through to a generator which powers an electric motor. The Scout SUV and pickup from VW will be one of the first in the West to adopt this model. Motor Trend reported a less desirable trend this week, that manufacturers are shutting off their connected car features including GPS and roadside assistance after the sunset of 3G in many countries. Not to be reminiscent of the good old days, but this is pretty bad. Also pretty bad is the way some dealers are handling ongoing tariff fluctuations, which is to raise hidden costs including delivery charges instead of outright explicitly increasing sticker price. The average car price in the US jumped 2.5% in the month of April. Moving into a few pieces of autonomous vehicles news in the week. It has been announced that Toyota, Honda, and several other Japanese automakers will work together in a government-backed framework to develop self-driving technology. The Japanese government is expected to provide subsidies under the framework to create a domestic supply chain. Waymo, owned by Google's parent company Alphabet, is now delivering more than 250,000 robotaxi trips per month. The growth trend has been exponential despite the company still being unprofitable. I think the race is against the clock before Waymo loses its first mover advantage. Speaking of which, an autonomous truck startup, Plus, is expected to go public under a $1.2 billion deal in Q4. Plus currently has Hyundai as a customer and is conducting road tests in both Texas and Sweden. In other news, the inventor of 3-point seatbelts, Volvo, has once again made an innovation in safety. It has unveiled a new adaptive seatbelt which will adjust to the physique of its occupants. Its rollout will start with the EX60 to arrive next year. VW may join the 4-day workweek movement in its Wolfsburg plant, although not by choice. The plant is currently ongoing reconstruction until 2027 to accommodate for the electric Golf, as well as a new TROC SUV. Lastly, it has been reported that a former Kia worker and a scrap dealer is being charged with the theft of 1,008 engines over 3 years, costing about $2.3 million to the company. This story is located in India. Moving into the They Just Cannot Make It Right section. There was again one notable recall this week, and it was from Ford again. About 500,000 Ford Explorers are being recalled for their pillar trim falling off. That was all for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and please look forward to weekly videos on an ongoing basis. On that bombshell, goodbye.